Okay, so this morning we are going to be factoring polynomials, and when we factor polynomials, that means we're going to express a bigger polynomial as the product of two smaller polynomials. So we're going to take this big polynomial and we're going to make it into two smaller polynomials. So let's go ahead and start with this trinomial. We know it's a trinomial because it has three terms. And now we're going to factor it. So our first step is to get our sets of parentheses. So since it's a trinomial, we're going to factor it into two binomials. So we have our sets of parentheses. We're going to take this x and break it down, or this x squared, and break it down into two x's. We know that it's going to be two x's because when we do the FOIL method, remember you start with your firsts and you multiply your first together and you would get this x squared. And then our second step is that we're going to take this 12 and we're going to factor it. So positive 12, and we're going to break it down and see what numbers we can multiply together to get this 12. So we're going to factor it. So we know positive and negative 1 times positive and negative 12 equals positive 12. We know positive and negative 2 and positive and negative 6 equals positive 12. And then positive and negative 3, positive and negative 4. Okay, so all of these, when we multiply them together, we get this negative 12. But our step 3 is going to be that we want to make sure our factors that we use when we add them together, we get this number. So negative 8. We want to be able to factor or add these together and get negative 8. Okay, so 1 plus 12 does not equal negative 8. And that's negative 1 and negative 12, or positive 1 and positive 12. Neither of those equal negative 8. 3 and 4 equals 7. 2 and 6 equals 8. But now we need to decide if it's positive or negative. So it's not going to be positive because our 8 is negative. So we are going to have negative 2 plus negative 6. And these two factors are going to be what goes here. So x minus 2 and x minus 6. And this is our answer. So this, if we added these together, or if we multiplied them together, if we did this problem, we would get this number, or this equation. So let's do FOIL just to check and see if we have everything right. So x times x, x squared. We do our first, then we do our outers. So 6 times x, or negative 6 times x equals negative 6x. We do our inners. Negative 2 times x is 2x, and then we do our outside. Negative 2 times negative 6 is 12. Add these together to get 8x. X squared minus 8x plus 12. And that is our answer. Okay, now we're going to move on to factoring polynomials with 4 terms. This one does get a little harder, but hopefully you all will follow along and we can do it together. All right, so let's start with this polynomial. We're going to have 5x cubed minus 15x squared plus 30x minus 90. Okay, and the first thing we want to do, this is called factoring by grouping. So the first thing we want to do is we want to group our terms together. So we want to group these first two terms and these last two terms. So we're going to have 5x cubed minus 15x squared, and then we're going to have, this is supposed to be a 30, my bad, 30x. We're going to have positive 30x minus 90. Okay, and then we're going to factor the binomials that we have. So we're going to find the greatest common factor between these two terms and then the greatest common factor between these two terms. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with these two terms. So 5x cubed minus 15x squared. Let's look at the greatest common factor. So let's go ahead and look at these whole numbers. So we have 5 and 15. 5 goes into both of these, meaning negative 15 is divisible by 5. So let's go ahead and take our 5 out. We'll get rid of this. And now let's look at our variables. So we have a negative, or not a negative, an x cubed and an x squared. So x squared can go into x cubed, but x cubed cannot go into x squared because there's one more x here. So let's go ahead and factor out this x cubed or x squared. So x squared, and that leaves us with 1x minus 15 divided by 3, or negative 15 divided by 3, gives us x minus 3. Okay, and now we're going to factor this one. So find the greatest common factor. We have 30x minus 90. And our greatest common factor is going to be this 30. So positive 30. That gets rid of this 30. So we have our x left. There is no x over here, so we can't divide an x out. We can't factor out an x. So I have x minus 3. And now our next step would be we're going to group them again. So group these guys and group these guys. And then we're going to look at these together and factor out the greatest common factor of this whole equation and this whole equation. So we have 5x squared times x minus 3, and then we have positive 30 times x minus 3. So first of all, we can factor out this x minus 3. We're going to put that in our parentheses down here. So x minus 3, we only need 1. And then we're going to take these two terms and put them in parentheses together. X squared plus 30. It's a weird 30. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, and that's our answer. So 5x squared plus 30 times x minus 3.